The invitation had come via a disappearing link, a cryptic coordinate pointing toward the jagged, snow-dusted spine of the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia. We were 6 college friends, led by Maya, a woman whose thirst for adrenaline was only matched by her bank account. She had rented the echo-proof vault, a brutalist concrete mansion buried deep within a valley so narrow the sun only touched the floor for 3 hours a day. We thought we were going there to throw the loudest, wildest New Year's Eve party of 2025. We didn't know that in this specific patch of the USA, sound was a death sentence. The drive was a descent into a gray, muffled world. The towering hemlocks seemed to lean inward, their heavy boughs dampening the roar of our SUV's engine. By the time we reached the house, a windowless monolith of gray stone and reinforced steel, the atmosphere was so thick it felt like walking through wool. Maya jumped out, her boots crunching loudly on the frozen gravel. No neighbors for 50 miles. She shouted, her voice echoing unnaturally sharp against the valley walls. We can scream until our lungs give out. Inside, the house was a marvel of soundproofing. Thick foam panels, heavy velvet drapes, and triple-pane glass made the interior as silent as a tomb. We began to set up the speakers, huge black towers designed to vibrate the very marrow in our bones. We uncorked the champagne, the pop of the corks sounding like small explosions in the sterile quiet. We were young, we were loud, and we were utterly ignorant of the local folklore, the stories of the year-takers, entities that hibernate in the deep earth, sensitive only to the vibrations of human joy. As the clock ticked toward 11 p.m., the music started, a heavy rhythmic bass that shook the floorboards. We danced, we roared, we toasted to a new year and a new us. Maya stood on the kitchen island, a bottle of tequila in one hand, screaming lyrics at the ceiling. The noise was a physical thing, a barrier we built against the creeping cold outside. But then the power flickered. The music stuttered, a low, distorted growl emanating from the speakers before dying completely. In a sudden, vacuum-like silence, we heard it. A sound from outside the reinforced steel door. It wasn't a knock. It was a rhythmic, wet thud, perfectly synchronized with the heartbeat Ilara felt thumping in her ears. Thump, thump. It's just the wind, Maya whispered, though her face had turned the color of ash. She walked toward the heavy door, her hand trembling as she peered through the tiny reinforced peephole. She froze. Her breath hitched, a tiny sharp gasp that seemed to ring through the room like a bell. "What is it?" Ilara asked, her voice barely a breath. Maya didn't answer. She backed away from the door, her eyes wide and glassy. Behind her, the heavy velvet drapes began to ripple, even though the windows were shut. A low, vibrating hum began to rise from beneath the floorboards, a sound so deep it made our teeth ache. It wasn't a mechanical hum. It was a choral moan, 1,000 voices humming a single discordant note. The year-takers didn't want our souls. They wanted our vibrations. Suddenly the steel door groaned. The heavy bolts didn't break. They liquefied, as if the metal itself was screaming in agony. The door swung open to reveal the freezing night air, but there was no one there. Only the mist, and a tall, spindly shadow that seemed to be made of compressed static. It didn't have a face, only a vertical slit that vibrated with every sound we made. "Don't make a sound," Maya mouthed, tears streaming down her face, but it was too late. The countdown had begun on the battery-operated clock on the wall. 10, 9, 8. With every digital beep, the shadow in the doorway grew denser, more solid. It lunged forward when the clock hit 5. It didn't claw or bite. It pressed its featureless face against the chest of our friend Jackson. He tried to scream, but as the sound left his throat, the shadow drank it. We watched in paralyzed horror as Jackson's body began to turn translucent, his very flesh becoming a pale, vibrating mist. Within seconds, he was gone, replaced by a hovering, silent mannequin made of gray ash. The horror hook was simple and absolute. In this town, your voice was your life force, and the entities outside were starving. We realized with a soul-crushing dread that the house wasn't soundproof to keep our noise in. It was designed to keep the world out, and we had opened the door. One by one, my friends succumbed to the reflex of terror. Sarah tripped and gasped. The shadow turned her into a marble statue mid-fall. Ben tried to whisper a prayer. The vibration of his vocal cords caused his head to shatter like glass. By 11:59 p.m., it was just me and Maya, huddled in the corner of the soundproof pantry. We held our breath until our lungs burned, our eyes locked on the digital clock. The year taker stood just outside the pantry door, its slit mouth vibrating in anticipation. It was waiting for the final noise of the year. It was waiting for the Happy New Year that would finish its feast. The clock hit 12 hours, 0 minutes and 0 seconds. The silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I pressed my hands over my mouth, biting my tongue until I tasted blood to keep from crying out. Maya, however, couldn't hold it. The sheer pressure of the silence broke her. She opened her mouth to scream, a primal jagged sound of pure unadulterated fear. But I didn't let her. I lunged forward, not to save her, but to smother her. I pressed my hand over her mouth and nose, pinning her against the cold concrete wall. She thrashed, her muffled whimpers vibrating against my palm, drawing the shadow closer. The entity pressed against the pantry door, the wood beginning to splinter and hum. I watched Maya's eyes go wide, then dull, as the oxygen left her. I watched her become the very thing she fears silent. When the sun finally crept over the Appalachian peaks on January 1st, I was the only thing left in the house that wasn't made of stone, ash, or plastic. I walked out into the blinding white snow, my throat so tight I knew I would never speak again. I looked back at the echo-proof vault and saw my friends positioned like garden ornaments around the porch, their faces frozen in eternal, silent screams. I reached my car and started the engine. The roar of the motor felt like a death knell. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a spindly static-filled shadow sitting in the back seat. It wasn't attacking. It was waiting. It had followed me, because now I was the only source of sound left in its world. Every time I blink, I hear the countdown. Every time my heart beats, I feel the vibration. I am a living instrument, and the year taker is waiting for me to play my final note. I didn't plan to stop in Hollow Creek, Oregon on December 31st, just before sunset. I wasn't looking for adventure or mystery. I was running from a failed marriage, from a year filled with funerals and empty rooms, from the kind of loneliness that echoes even when you're not alone. My name is Rachel Moore. I'm 31, and Hollow Creek was supposed to be a cheap rental for a fresh start. That's what the listing said. Quiet town. Friendly people. Perfect place to begin again. The first warning came from the road sign. Welcome to Hollow Creek. Population 312. Below it, someone had scratched something into the metal with a sharp object. The words were uneven, desperate. Leave before midnight. I should have listened. The town looked frozen in time. Snow covered the streets in uneven patches, and every house was decorated for New Year's Eve lights glowing warmly, paper banners reading Happy New Year, clocks displayed in windows as if time itself was being watched. Yet the streets were empty. No laughter, no music, no fireworks, only the wind. At the rental house, the key was waiting under the mat, just like the email promised. Inside, the place was spotless but lifeless, staged like a home no one actually lived in. On the kitchen table sat a handwritten note. You should unpack quickly. Midnight comes fast here. No signature. I checked my phone. Full battery. No signal. At around 8 p.m., there was a knock at the door. A woman stood outside, maybe in her late 40s, bundled in a thick coat. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to Hollow Creek," she said. "I'm Marianne. We bring food to newcomers." She handed me a covered dish. I thanked her and invited her in, but she shook her head sharply. "No, we don't go inside new homes on New Year's Eve." "Why not?" I asked. Her smile twitched. "Tradition." Before leaving, she added quietly, "You're alone?" "Yes." Her eyes lingered on my face, filled with something that looked disturbingly close to pity. "I'm sorry," she said, and walked away. By 10 p.m., the town felt heavier, as if the air itself had thickened. From my window, I saw lights turning off one by one, houses going dark in a slow, deliberate pattern. Every clock inside read 11:30, even though my watch said 10:47. That's when I heard singing. It drifted through the streets, low and mournful, carried on the wind. Women's voices. Dozens of them, all singing the same word over and over. Stay. I stepped outside despite every instinct screaming not to. The sound led me toward the town square, where a large clock tower loomed over a circular patch of snow-covered ground. The people of Hollow Creek stood in a wide ring around it, silent now, faces pale, eyes fixed on the clock. Marianne spotted me and hurried over. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You're not supposed to see this part. What is this?" I asked. "Why is everyone staring at the clock?" Her hands trembled. "Because when it reaches midnight, the town takes its due." "That scratch on the sign," I said slowly. "What does it mean?" Marianne swallowed. "Every new year, Hollow Creek takes one woman. If it doesn't, the town doesn't make it to morning." I laughed. I had to. The idea was insane. "This is some kind of sick joke." "I wish it was," she replied. "It started over 100 years ago, a mine collapse. Dozens of men trapped underground. The women prayed, begged, promised anything for their husbands to come back. Something answered. The ground beneath the clock tower began to vibrate. They made a deal," she continued. "One woman each year. Chosen by the town. Chosen by it." The singing started again, louder this time. My name rose above the others, whispered from every direction. "Rachel." I backed away. "No, you can't be serious." The crowd slowly turned toward me, every single person. "You're new," someone said. "You're alone. You're grieving," another added. The clock struck 11:58. Hands reached for me. I fought, screamed, shoved my way free and ran. Snow burned my lungs as I sprinted through the streets, the sound of footsteps pounding behind me. No matter which direction I ran, the streets curved back toward the square. At 11:59, the siren began to wail. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded like a voice stretched too far, crying out in pain. The ground split open beneath the clock tower, revealing a darkness that swallowed the light. From within it rose something tall and shapeless, its surface shifting like liquid shadow. Faces pressed against it from the inside, women's faces, mouths open in silent screams. Marianne grabbed my arm. "If you don't go, someone else will," she whispered. "Please, we all have families." The clock began its final countdown. 10, 5, 2. Midnight. The world went silent. Then the town lights came back on all at once. The ground closed. The crowd exhaled as one. I was gone. Now I exist beneath Hollow Creek, woven into something older than the town itself. Every December I listen. I hear cars slow at the sign. I hear women running from lives they want to escape. And when the clock nears midnight, I whisper gently into the cold air, stay, because Hollow Creek still stands, and every new year this town takes one woman,